Most men over 50 have spent decades in conversations with women who were clearly interested in them and missed every signal. Not because the signals were not there, because nobody ever taught them what to look for. The research on female attraction behavior identifies 8 specific things a woman touches when she likes the man she is with. Behaviors that are largely involuntary, neurologically driven, and appearing in up to 75% of observed flirtatious interactions. These are not subtle hints that require paranormal perception to detect. They are consistent, research-backed, biologically rooted signals that operate in plain sight in coffee shops, at dinner tables, in professional settings, in every ordinary social interaction where genuine attraction is present. Today, I'm going through all 8. What they are, why they happen, and exactly what they mean, so you never miss them again. Here is exactly what we are covering today, and I want you to stay with me through all of it because the framework builds progressively, and the final section is what makes everything else actually usable. First, the foundation, why the body communicates attraction before the conscious mind decides to, what the limbic system has to do with it, and why the behaviors we are about to cover are largely involuntary, meaning they are not performances a woman chooses to put on. They are expressions of a nervous system responding to genuine attraction before she has consciously decided to do anything about it. Second, the 8 specific behaviors, each one presented with its research base, its neurological or evolutionary mechanism, and enough specific detail that you can recognize it accurately in a real interaction rather than wondering afterwards whether you imagined it. Third, the reading framework. 2 principles from the behavioral science literature, the cluster principle and the context principle, that separate accurate signal interpretation from guesswork. Individual signals can be ambiguous. Clusters of signals in specific contexts are not. By end of this video, you will have both the signal knowledge and the reading framework to use it reliably. Stay with me. This is the map most men were never given. I'm Dr. Janice Powell. I'm a certified men's sex therapist with over a decade of clinical experience, and this channel exists to give men over 50 the honest, research-backed, clinically grounded conversations about attraction, sexuality, and relationships that they deserve and almost never get anywhere else. If this is your first time here, welcome. Please subscribe right now. Every week I cover the topics your doctor does not have time for, your friends will not bring up, and the internet consistently gets wrong. You deserve better than guesswork. This channel is where the evidence lives. Let's get into it. Part 1. The foundation. Why her body speaks before she does. Before we get to the 8 signals, I want to spend time on the foundation because understanding why these behaviors happen is what transforms them from a list of things to memorize into a coherent, readable language. Attraction is not processed at the conscious level first. It is processed subcortically, below the level of conscious decision-making, in the limbic system, which governs emotional and instinctive responses. The limbic system activates attraction-related behaviors automatically and involuntarily before conscious awareness catches up. This means that when a woman produces the behaviors we are about to cover, she is very often not making a deliberate choice. Her nervous system is expressing what her conscious mind may not yet have fully processed or decided to act on. This is critical to understand because it changes how you interpret what you see. You are not looking for performances. You are not trying to decode calculated strategies. You are reading the honest output of a nervous system that is responding to your presence in a specific and identifiable way. That is a fundamentally different and significantly more reliable source of information than anything a person consciously chooses to say or do. Research by Albert Mehrabian established that in emotionally significant communication, nonverbal signals carry disproportionate weight relative to words. In the specific context of attraction signaling, behavioral scientists estimate that up to 90% of initial attraction communication occurs nonverbally. Most men have spent their entire lives focused almost exclusively on the verbal 10%. Today, that changes. The scientific study of touch as communication is called haptics. Haptic research distinguishes between 2 categories of touch behavior that are both relevant to what we are covering today. The first is auto-contact behavior, also called self-touching or self-adapter behavior, in which a person touches their own body. The second is object-touching behavior, in which a person manipulates objects in their environment. Both categories carry significant information about emotional state, arousal level, and social intention when they occur in the presence of someone the toucher finds attractive. Desmond Morris, whose foundational work on human body language remains among the most cited in behavioral science, identified specific auto-contact behaviors as reliable indicators of positive affect, attraction-rooted nervousness, and unconscious self-grooming triggered by the presence of someone the toucher finds compelling. His research and the decades of work that builds on it forms much of the foundation for what we are covering today. For men over 50 who were never given this information, who spent decades either missing these signals entirely or dismissing them as something they could not trust their own reading of, I want to say something directly. You are not behind. You are about to leapfrog decades of misreading in a single conversation. The signals were always there. The awareness is what was missing. And awareness, unlike youth, is something that only grows. Part 2, Signals 1, 2, and 3. Signal number 1 is hair touching and hair flipping. This is among the most studied and most consistently reliable attraction signals in the entire behavioral science literature, and it is also one of the most commonly dismissed by the men who see it. Research identifies two distinct mechanisms operating simultaneously in this behavior. The first is neurochemical. Hair touching is an auto-contact behavior triggered by elevated dopamine in the presence of an attractive person. Dopamine, the brain's primary reward and anticipation chemical, surges in response to attractive stimuli, producing a mild nervous arousal that the body manages through self-soothing touch. The hair, with its density of tactile sensation, is one of the primary sites where that self-soothing expresses itself. The second mechanism is evolutionary. Hair flipping or hair adjustment exposes the neck, and neck exposure is a vulnerability display. In evolutionary terms, offering vulnerability to another person communicates trust, comfort, and the absence of a threat response. You do not expose your neck to someone whose presence feels unsafe. You expose it to someone whose company you want to be in. When a woman flips her hair and holds your gaze while doing it, she's doing both simultaneously, managing the pleasurable tension of attraction and communicating openness to the person causing it. Monica Moore at the University of Missouri conducted extensive field research on female courtship signaling, observing thousands of interactions in natural social settings and documenting the frequency and context of nonverbal attraction behaviors. Hair touching appeared in 75% of all observed flirtatious interactions. That is not occasional. That is a defining characteristic of female attraction signaling. Signal number 2 is neck touching. The neck is one of the most neurologically sensitive and evolutionarily significant areas of the human body, and touching it or drawing attention to it carries specific meaning in the context of attraction. When a woman touches her own neck, particularly the side of the neck or the nape in a man's presence, she's producing a vulnerability display. She is communicating comfort, emotional openness, and the specific absence of a threat response that accompanies genuine positive regard for another person. The neck is not touched in neutral or uncomfortable social situations. It is touched in the presence of someone whose company feels safe and desirable. Research on the neck as both an erogenous and signaling zone confirms its dual significance. It is one of the areas most densely packed with CT afferents, the slow-touch nerve fibers we have covered on this channel before, making it exquisitely sensitive to attention. When a woman touches her own neck and maintains eye contact with you while doing so, she is drawing your attention to an area associated with intimacy and vulnerability. That is not accidental. Her nervous system is doing it on purpose, even if she is not. Signal number 3 is wrist and inner arm exposure and touching. The inner wrist, with its visible pulse point, its thin sensitive skin, and its proximity to the surface vasculature, is identified in behavioral science as one of the most significant vulnerability displays available in social interaction. It is one of the softest, most exposed, most neurologically sensitive areas of the body, and turning it outward or touching it in someone's presence communicates openness and positive affect toward that specific person. When a woman gestures in a way that repeatedly exposes the inner wrist to you, turns her palms upward during conversation, or touches her own inner forearm while engaged with you, she is producing one of the oldest and most instinctive openness signals in human nonverbal communication. Research on wrist exposure in social interaction confirms that it does not appear consistently in neutral or uncomfortable interactions. It is specifically triggered by the presence of someone toward whom the displayer feels positive, open, and drawn. Watch for it in gesture patterns. Woman who is not interested will gesture with palms facing down or inward. A woman who is interested will repeatedly unconsciously turn her wrist toward you. Part 3, Signals 4, 5, and 6. Signal number 4 is touching objects near or associated with you. Object touching behaviors are among the most sophisticated and most systematically underread signals in everyday attraction research. When a woman touches a glass near your hand, handles an item you've just put down, touches the stem of a wineglass while holding eye contact with you, or repeatedly brings her hands into contact with objects in your physical space, she is producing what behavioral scientists call a proximity-seeking behavior. The mechanism is elegant. Direct physical contact with another person carries social risk. It is visible. It is unambiguous. It requires a level of social courage that early-stage attraction may not yet have generated. Touching an object in that person's space achieves something similar at lower risk. It reduces the physical distance between two people through the intermediary of an object. It functions as a socially acceptable, plausibly deniable way of initiating closeness. The woman maintains the appearance of non-intentionality while her nervous system is actively moving her toward the person she is drawn to. For men who understand this signal, it is one of the clearest and most actionable indicators of interest available. When a woman's hands keep finding their way to objects in your immediate space, she is telling you something her words have not said yet. Signal number 5 is self-grooming behavior. Adjusting clothing, straightening jewelry, smoothing fabric, or making small appearance corrections in your presence. Self-grooming in the presence of an attractive person is one of the most evolutionarily consistent attraction behaviors documented across species. In humans, it manifests as adjusting a collar, straightening a necklace, smoothing a dress, or running a hand along clothing. Small, often unconscious appearance corrections that signal a specific awareness. I care how I appear to you right now. Research by Irenaeus Ibel-Ibisfeld, a foundational figure in human ethology who studied behavioral universals across cultures with no history of shared media, documented self-grooming as a cross-cultural universal in attraction context. It appeared consistently across diverse populations with no opportunity for behavioral modeling from shared sources. This confirms its evolutionary rather than learned origin. It is not something women do because they saw in a film. It is something the human nervous system does in the presence of someone it wants to impress. The practical reading note here is timing. Self-grooming triggered by your arrival or by a shift in the interaction that increases emotional intensity carries significantly more signal value than grooming that occurs regardless of who is present. Signal number 6 is lip touching and lip moistening. The lips have one of the highest concentrations of sensory nerve endings in the entire body, higher than the fingertips, and lip-touching behaviors carry specific and well-documented significance in attraction signaling research. Touching or tracing the lips, moistening them, or drawing attention to them through gesture are identified in the behavioral science literature as both arousal indicators and attention-directing behaviors. The woman is unconsciously drawing the man's gaze to one of the most intimate and expressive features of the face, the feature most associated with kissing, with speech, with emotional expression. Here is the specifically important finding. Lip moistening is not entirely deliberate. Research identifies it as a physiological arousal indicator. The mild parasympathetic activation that accompanies genuine attraction increases salivation, which produces the moistening behavior as a direct physiological consequence. It is the body responding to attraction chemistry, not a calculated signal being performed for an audience. When you see it in combination with other signals from this list, you are reading genuine physiological arousal. That is significant information. Part 4. Signal 7 and 8 plus the reading framework. Signal number 7 is mirroring touch. Touching herself where she wants to be touched or where physical contact has occurred. This is one of the more sophisticated signals in the attraction behavior literature and one of the most reliably meaningful when it appears. When a woman touches an area of her own body, her arm, her collarbone, her leg, her face, in a way that mirrors either where she has been touched or where she finds herself wanting contact, she's producing what behavioral scientists call an anticipatory or echo-touch behavior. The mechanism involves significant neurological engagement. To produce a mirroring touch response, the brain must be processing the interaction at a level of depth and focus that neutral or indifferent interactions do not generate. It requires genuine absorption in the other person, a level of engagement where the boundary between self and other begins to blur in the specific way that deep attraction produces. Research on physical mirroring and attraction confirms that self-touch mirroring is a reliable indicator of high positive affect and deep unconscious engagement. It does not appear in casual or disinterested interactions. When you see it, when a woman touches her own arm shortly after your hands have been near hers, when she traces her collarbone while you hold eye contact, when she touches her own leg while her attention is fully on you, you are reading one of the most honest signals her nervous system can produce. Signal number 8 is foot and ankle touching and shoe play. This is perhaps the most under-recognized signal in everyday attraction research and understanding. It gives you access to information most men are completely unaware of. The feet are neurologically mapped in close proximity to the genitals in the brain's somatosensory cortex, the brain's body map, which gives foot and ankle touching subtle but real arousal associations that operate largely below conscious awareness. Shoe play, slipping a shoe partially off and on, dangling it from a toe, rotating the ankle, is identified in behavioral science as a displacement behavior, a physically grounded self-soothing action that accompanies the pleasurable tension of attraction when it is not yet found a more direct outlet. Research by Alan Pease on body language and social interaction identifies foot direction as one of the most honest indicators of social intention available. Because unlike facial expressions or upper body posture, most people never think to manage the direction of their feet. Feet point toward people we want to move toward and away from people we do not. Foot and ankle touching in your presence, particularly when her feet are oriented toward you, represents a convergence of multiple signals simultaneously. The body map proximity, the displacement behavior of pleasurable tension, and the honest directional intent of feet that have not been told what to do. Now, the reading framework. 2 principles that make everything above actually usable. The first is the cluster principle. No single signal should be read in isolation. One hair touch is ambiguous. One lip moistening could be coincidence. But hair touching combined with neck exposure, wrist display, object touching in your space, and lip moistening appearing in the same interaction with the same person is a cluster. And research by Desmond Morris confirmed that genuine attraction signaling occurs in clusters of 3 or more simultaneous or closely sequential behaviors. Clusters are what distinguish reliable reading from wishful thinking. Train yourself to count signals, not just notice them. The second is the context principle, or the same behavior carries different information in different context. Self-grooming that occurs specifically when you arrive or intensifies when your attention shifts toward her carries different weight than grooming that occurs constantly, regardless of who is present. Object touching near you is significant when it happens specifically in your space and not consistently elsewhere in the same setting. The question to ask is not just, is this behavior occurring, but is it occurring specifically because I am here? Context answers that question, and men who attend to context read attraction signals with the level of accuracy that most people never achieve. The maturity advantage. Here's what I want every man over 50 to take from today, and I want you to hear it clearly. The signals we covered today do not care about your age. A woman attracted to a man in his 50s produces the exact same neurological and behavioral responses as a woman attracted to a younger man. The limbic system does not adjust its output based on the recipient's birth year. The hair touching happens, the neck exposure happens, the wrist display happens, the proximity seeking happens. All of it happens to men of every age, whenever genuine attraction is present. What has been missing for most men over 50 is not the signals. It is awareness to read them. And here is the specific advantage that age and experience bring to this awareness. An advantage younger men genuinely do not have. Younger men approach social interactions with too much self-focus to reliably read the person in front of them. Their attention is split between what they are saying, how they are coming across, whether they are impressive enough, and what they should do next. That internal noise drowns out the signal. By 50, most of that noise is quieted. The need to perform has softened. The self-consciousness that occupied so much cognitive bandwidth in younger decades has largely resolved. What replaces it, if you allow it to, is genuine presence. The capacity to actually watch, to actually listen, to be sufficiently attentive to the person in front of you that her nervous system's honest output becomes visible, rather than lost in the background of your own internal monologue. That capacity, genuine, unhurried, focused attention, is the prerequisite for reading every single signal we covered today. And it is something that most men over 50 have more of than they realize. The signals were always there. Now you have the map. The only thing left is to show up present enough to read it. Let me give you the complete picture one final time. Attraction is processed subcortically, below conscious awareness, which means the behaviors a woman produces when she is interested in a man are largely involuntary expressions of a nervous system responding to genuine attraction. Up to 90% of initial attraction communication is nonverbal. Most men have spent their lives focused on the verbal 10%. The 8 signals to recognize are hair touching and flipping, the dopamine-triggered auto-contact behavior, and neck vulnerability display that appeared in 75% of Monica Moore's observed flirtatious interactions. Neck touching, the vulnerability and emotional openness display, wrist and inner arm exposure, one of the oldest and most instinctive openness signals in human nonverbal communication. Touching objects in your space, The proximity-seeking behavior that reduces distance through socially acceptable means. Self-grooming, the evolutionarily universal signal that confirms awareness of and desire to impress a specific person. Lip-touching and moistening, the physiological arousal indicator and attention-directing behavior. Mirroring touch, the echo-touch behavior that requires deep neurological engagement to produce. And foot and ankle touching with shoe play, the displacement behavior of pleasurable tension combined with the honest directional intent of feet that point toward people we want to be closer to. Read clusters, not individual signals. Read contexts, not just behavior, and bring the genuine, unhurried presence that makes all of it visible in the first place. The signals were always there. Now you know what you are looking at. If this video gave you a map you have needed for a long time, please like it. It helps other men who need this conversation find it. Leave your questions in the comments. I read every one of them, and if you are not yet subscribed, do it now. This channel exists to give men over 50 the honest, evidence-based, clinically grounded conversations about attraction and sexual health that they deserve and rarely get anywhere else. I'm Dr. Janice Powell. I'll see you in the next one.